It wasn't the oven making noise, it was murder in motion. Welcome to Marple Mysteries. I am your host, Harrington. I'd be delighted to know, where are you joining from today? Reading your thoughts always brightens the day. Let's start. It was a Wednesday, which meant beef ribs with mustard glaze, a schedule that had only two excuses for deviation: World War III or Fritz Brenner's untimely demise. Since neither mushroom cloud nor morgue visit had transpired by noon, I had every expectation of eating on time and in peace. That illusion died the moment the doorbell rang. Now I'll admit I don't mind a mid-morning client. A little intrigue before lunch helps the appetite, like a splash of Worcestershire in a Bloody Mary. But when the bell rings twice in less than 30 seconds, it's either an amateur with a twitch or someone desperate enough to test Nero Wolfe's tolerance for abrupt behavior. Wolfe, I should note, has none. I opened the door to a woman who didn't wait for my patter. She slid in like a breath of panic, with a canvas-wrapped object under one arm and a voice already revving at medium-high. "You're Archie Goodwin?" she asked, confirming that her nerves hadn't dulled her instincts. "That's right," I said. "And unless you're carrying an unexpected inheritance or an arrest warrant, I'd suggest slowing down. Mr. Wolfe doesn't leap to his feet for high-strung visitors, especially not before lunch." She paused just long enough for me to get a look, 30-ish expensive shoes that hadn't enjoyed the walk, and a face you'd call arresting if the situation weren't already headed that direction. There was flour on her cuff, and the faintest streak of raspberry across her cheek. Either she was a culinary artist, or she'd just lost a battle with a crostata. "My name is Hester Dole," she said, "and I need Mr. Wolfe's help before someone gets killed." I should have called that line a cliché and turned her around, but there was something about the way she said it, low, urgent, and a little too practiced. I ushered her in, took the bundle she was carrying, and led her toward the office with the solemnity of a man carrying a bomb that might go off mid-sentence. Wolfe was, predictably, in his chair, glaring at the New York Times crossword as though it had insulted his intelligence by existing. I introduced the lady, deposited the canvas package on the corner of his desk like it might be contagious, and took my seat. "She claims someone's in danger of being killed," I said. "And since she's brought us either a prop or a weapon wrapped in a pastry cloth, I suggest we listen." Wolfe didn't glance at the bundle. He gave her his standard greeting. "You are interrupting a fixed routine. You have precisely 10 minutes to demonstrate necessity." Hester Dole, to her credit, didn't flinch. She sat, composed herself with a practiced inhale, and began. "I work at Lafayette Dussel, the test kitchen for Lummis Culinary Media. We film recipe segments, shoot product features, and ghost-develop cookbooks for celebrity chefs who can't boil water without pyrotechnics. Yesterday, one of our food stylists found a note hidden behind the spice rack. It wasn't signed, but it said, 'He thinks the kitchen is his kingdom. He'll die with a whisk in his hand.'" I glanced at the canvas-wrapped item Wolfe was still ignoring. She followed my look. "That," she said, "is the whisk." Wolfe lifted a brow. "It whistled murder?" "No," she said. "It whistles when it's used. It's part of a custom set, props for our videos. This one was modified as a joke months ago by our lead stylist. When you whisk with it, it emits a faint, high-pitched sound. Everyone thought it was funny, until yesterday." "Until the E note," I said. "And now?" She swallowed. "Now that stylist, Leo Rain, is dead." That got Wolfe's attention. He adjusted a finger on the chair arm and eyed her more directly. "Explain." "I went in early today. The others were still out. Delia, Pete, and Andrew. I found Leo slumped over the prep counter. He was cold, no visible injuries, no blood. But the whisk was in his hand." Wolfe frowned. "And?" "I called the police, then left before they arrived. I panicked, but I took the whisk. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it was a message. I didn't trust them to notice what mattered. Wolfe leaned back a fraction of an inch, an expression of deep displeasure. You removed evidence from a death scene. That was ill-advised. I know, she said, but I knew I had to come here. Someone in that kitchen meant harm. The police will assume it was an accident. Leo was healthy. Only 39, no known heart conditions. And he was about to be made creative director. Someone resented it. Who? Hester hesitated. Delia Hunt, our recipe developer. She used to date Leo. Pete Brand. He was competing for the same promotion. And Andrew Krim, the director. He's volatile, but none of them would strike you as dangerous until that note. I spoke up. And this Whisk, you think it's involved? I don't know, but something's wrong. Leo was smart, cautious. If he was holding the Whisk, when he died it wasn't by chance. Wolfe muttered something under his breath about the idiocy of culinary melodrama and flicked a hand at me. Archie, determine the facts. Verify the death, the note, the Whisk, and the nature of these associates. Do not antagonize the police. Unless you must. I will not have Inspector Kramer's fulminations in my house this week. I stood. Any questions I should ask first? Yes, Wolfe said. He leaned forward with the expression he reserved for phrases both sharp and final. Ask her why she really brought us the Whisk, and why she's so certain it wasn't natural causes. I turned. Miss Dole? She didn't hesitate. Because Leo left me a voicemail last night. One I didn't hear until after I found him. He said, if anything happens to me, tell the man in the chair. He'll know it wasn't an accident. That was all Wolfe needed. The kitchen, it seemed, had called twice, and Wolfe had answered, without leaving his chair. By the time I had my coat on, and the Whisk wrapped in a handkerchief tucked in my pocket like a ticket to a particularly unsettling performance, Wolfe had already settled into a contemplative silence that I knew better than to interrupt. Hester Dole had been escorted out with the kind of solemn assurance I reserve for nervous women with secrets and conscience troubles. She'd given me the names and addresses of the rest of the kitchen crew, and I'd promised to tread lightly with the cops, though we both knew there was about as much chance of that as Wolfe skipping lunch to attend Pilates. I hit the sidewalk with a brisk pace and headed to the West 30s, where La Fête du Sel rented the second floor of a former Button factory turned faux industrial creative complex. The sign out front was tastefully understated. Etched steel with an accent of sea salt glued in the corners. I buzzed, got let in by a jumpy intern in athleisure who looked about 12, and told him I was there to speak with whoever was available about Leo Raine. He blinked. The food stylist? That's the one, I said. Or rather, was. Right, he murmured, stepping aside. They're all here today. Police came earlier, took a look, then said the coroner would determine. The rest. They didn't arrest anybody. I followed him down a short hallway that reeked of roasted garlic and dish soap. It opened into a whitewashed studio with fake windows, overhead rigs, 3 polished prep islands, and a backdrop that screamed Scandinavian rustic chic. A middle-aged man in a caramel-colored Henley was adjusting a boom mic over a chopping board, stacked with parsley. He looked up when he saw me and narrowed his eyes like I was the wrong kind of garnish. I'm Archie Goodwin, I said. Private investigator, I'd like a word with whoever's in charge. That'd be me, said the man, stepping forward. Andrew Krim, director and executive producer. You've got 5 minutes. Fair enough. I assume you've heard. About Leo. His mouth tightened. He was a pain in the ass, but he didn't deserve to die holding a novelty Whisk. That confirmed one detail without me asking. I kept it rolling. How did you find out? Delia texted me this morning. Said she came in to test a sauce and found him on the butcher block, cold as last week's consomme. Called the cops, called me, called Pete. Hester must have already been in and out by then. Was anything else touched or moved? He shrugged. I didn't take inventory. I wasn't here when it happened. I nodded toward a dark-haired woman behind the spice rack, adjusting labels. That Delia? She's the developer. She knew Leo best. You'll get more story from her than from me. I thanked him, walked over, and introduced myself again. Delia Hunt turned, gave me a clinical once-over, and got back to aligning saffron and smoked paprika like it was therapy. I already told the police everything, she said. He wasn't sick, he wasn't suicidal, he didn't drink. He was sharp, funny, obsessive about detail. He had a terrible taste in jazz and a worse taste in people, but he didn't just drop dead. I raised an eyebrow. That's a lot of... Personal for a food stylist. He was my ex, she said flatly. For 3 years. We broke up when he got promoted last month. I let that settle for a beat. Bad blood? Not the kind that kills. But I didn't cry. Fair. Hester. Think someone tampered with that whisk he was holding. You ever use it? She shot me a look. You mean the whistle whisk? Leo's idea of a joke. He had it rigged with a brass tube that let out a pitch when he whisked fast. Made it sound like it was protesting. Used to drive Andrew nuts on set. Could anyone have sabotaged it? If they did, it wasn't me. I hadn't touched that thing in weeks. Leo kept it locked up. He liked his toys pristine. I thanked her and made a mental note of the contradiction. Hester said Leo had it out yesterday. Delia claimed it was usually locked up. Either someone had borrowed it without permission, or Leo had reason to take it out again after hours. Neither option was relaxing. Next on the list was Pete Brand, the other stylist. Tall, lanky, and the kind of guy whose shirts always look slept in, even when freshly pressed. He was in the back, prepping a tray of microgreens, like they owed him money. Tell me about Leo, I said, wasting no time. He sniffed. Golden boy, got the job I wanted. Got the girl for a while, too. Got the credit for recipes I edited. What do you think I think? Do you own a brass tube? He blinked. What? The whistle in the whisk. I'm checking to see who could have tampered with it. No idea, that was his toy, I hated it. Said it was gimmicky, he thought it made him memorable. Any chance you were here late last night? Nope. Left by 6. Andrew was still here. Hester might have been. Ask them. I already had, mostly, but it was interesting that he'd volunteer Hester without prompting. I checked the time, 1:30. Wolfe would be fuming if I didn't make it back for lunch. The coroner's report wasn't public yet, and the cops were playing this like a softball. No official cause, no arrests, no urgency. Just a dead man with a novelty whisk and a voicemail that named Wolfe as the man to call. I slipped out, made a quick call to Lon Cohen at the Gazette for a background check on the 3 suspects, then hailed a cab back to the brownstone. When I got in, Fritz was serving leg of lamb with apricot glaze and parsnip puree. Wolfe's reward for tolerating interruptions. I washed up, handed the handkerchief-wrapped whisk to Wolfe, and sat down. He sniffed it once, frowned, and passed it back. Odorless. I anticipated as much. That is not the mechanism. I said, all 3 had motive. Delia had romantic history and resentment. Pete had professional envy. Andrew had control issues. But it's Hester who handled the whisk last. And she took it with her after the body was found. Yes, Wolfe murmured, eyes half-lidded. And she came to us not out of fear, but calculation. She may be sincere, but sincerity is no guarantee of innocence. That whisk did not kill Leo Raine, but it may have drawn death to him. I nodded. You want Saul? Not yet. First, we wait for the coroner's report. Then we see if the killer tries to reclaim the whisk. Something tells me it wasn't meant to leave the kitchen. And sure enough, I didn't even make it to the hallway after lunch before the phone rang. I picked it up and heard a voice, low and tense. You have the whisk. I want it back. If you care about staying alive, leave it on your stoop by midnight. Don't involve the cops or Wolfe. Click. Wolfe, from his chair, simply said, Bring me beer. And then we bait a trap. The game, as always, was on. I brought Wolfe his beer, Hirsch from the third shelf in the back of the fridge, chilled to precisely 42 degrees Fahrenheit, and set it down with the reverence of a monk placing a relic on a shrine. He took a sip without looking at me and muttered, "We may proceed." "Proceed to what?" I asked. Our mystery whisperer didn't leave a return address, just a threat. He closed his eyes and leaned back, steepling his fingers like a man preparing to instruct the Almighty on matters of logic. They believe the whisk contains something, a message, an object, a trace, else they wouldn't wish to retrieve it. They do not suspect we know it is harmless, or at least appears so. That is to our advantage. I picked up the whisk from where I'd left it, unwrapped it again and gave it a long, thoughtful look. It was metal, polished, absurdly pristine. Fritz would have approved. The oddity was subtle. Near the base of the handle, you could just barely make out a seam, a ring of fine metal etched into the grip, almost nothing to the eye. But with pressure. From my thumbnail, the top segment unscrewed, revealing a narrow cavity no wider than a pencil lead. "Wolfe," I said, "look at this." He did. And for Wolfe, looking meant leaning forward approximately 3 inches and narrowing his eyes like a hawk examining a mouse from 300 feet. "Indeed," he said, "and it is empty." "Wasn't always," I said. "The question is what was in it, and why was Leo holding it when he died?" He waved a hand. "We are not yet equipped to answer. Bring Saul. Tonight." I didn't argue. Saul Panzer was the best in the business, and Wolfe only called him when the stakes were personal, or when the terrain was unfamiliar and he needed a scout with good instincts and clean shoes. While Wolfe sank into his post-lunch inertia, I retreated to the phone room and dialed Saul's number. He picked up halfway through the first ring, which either meant he was expecting trouble, or he was playing poker again with that bunch of bridge misfits who thought folding early was strategy. "Saul," I said, "we've got a body, a whisk, a missing message, and a caller who wants it back by midnight. Wolfe wants you here now." "I'm on my way." That was Saul, 4 words and a hat already in his hand. By 6:30, he was seated across from Wolfe, notebook out, pen poised, and his expression as calm as a lake in a library. Wolfe explained it all in under 3 minutes, which for him was a kind of sprint. Saul absorbed every syllable, then looked at me. "What did you get from the crew?" I gave him the rundown. Delia's frost, Pete's grievance, Andrew's detachment, and Hester's panicked precision. "Andrew had motive," I said. "Leo was about to become creative director. That's a paycheck and a power shift. Delia had personal baggage. Pete wanted the job and didn't get it, but only Hester touched the whisk after the death." Saul said nothing for a beat. Then, "And now someone's scared you have it." "Or scared Wolfe does," I said. Wolfe grunted. "Fear is often loud. Panic, however, tends to whisper. Mr. Panzer, you will pay a visit to La Fête du Sel after midnight. If our caller intends to retrieve the whisk, they may do so in person." "I expect you to follow," Saul nodded. "You want me to place the real whisk or a decoy?" Wolfe pursed his lips. "The real one. They must believe it unaltered. But I trust you'll intercept before it departs." Saul rose. "Done. After." He left. I prepared the stoop for the drop. 1 brown paper bag folded twice placed on the 3rd step from the bottom, where the light from the street lamp would just touch it. Wolfe naturally refused to even glance out the window, but his ears were tuned like an owl's. Midnight crept up like a second-rate burglar. Saul was posted across the street in a borrowed coupe, engine cold, eyes sharp. I sat in the front, room with a paperback and my revolver within reach. Not that I expected trouble, but people willing to kill for kitchen tools don't always respect doors. At 12:14, a figure appeared. They moved like they'd rehearsed it. Hoodie up, gloves on, stooping low, eyes darting to the windows. A quick snatch of the bag, then backpedaling down the steps like the pavement was lava. Saul's car rolled forward, with the grace of a whisper, and the figure ducked around the corner not fast enough. Saul followed. I waited 3 full minutes, then returned to Wolfe. He didn't ask, just said, "We wait." Saul called at 1:03 a.m. He'd followed the thief to a second-floor walk-up in Flatbush. The apartment was rented under the name Gordon Wren, a name that, according to Lon Cohen's files, didn't appear in any Lummis staff listings. "Fake name," I said after Wolfe relayed the address. "Which means whoever it is didn't want to be found, could be an outside contractor. Blackmail, industrial sabotage?" "Conceivably," Wolfe said, "or an internal player using an alias." "I want to know who rented that apartment and who entered it last week." I nodded. "Tomorrow, you want Kramer involved?" He gave me a look as if I'd suggested tea instead of beer, only if compelled. The next morning, before the clock had even thought of hitting 9, Saul rang the doorbell with a file folder and a raised brow. Lease was paid in cash by Delia Hunt's assistant. The unit's been unoccupied since Sunday, except for a visitor yesterday around 9:45 p.m. "Who?" Wolfe asked. Saul handed over a grainy security cam still. Wolfe passed it to me. "Hester Dole." She hadn't mentioned a trip to Flatbush, or a second apartment, or anything resembling the kind of errand that involved retrieving or depositing a modified Whisk. Wolfe said nothing, but I could see it on his face. Someone had baked this thing halfway through, and now it was time to turn up the heat. "Archie," Wolfe said, "get Miss Dole back here. Tell her the Whisk has spoken." And just like that, the kitchen's ghost story was about to become an interrogation. Hester Dole arrived 23 minutes after my call, dressed like she wanted to convince the world she hadn't spent the night wondering if a man in a fedora was following her, which, incidentally, one had been. Her hair was brushed, her jacket matched her gloves, and her eyes were tired in a way concealer couldn't fix. She stepped into the office with caution, the way a pastry chef checks the oven after a forgotten timer. Wolfe didn't rise. He barely even nodded. He gestured to the red chair with the same gravity you might use to summon a witness to the stand. Hester sat and crossed her legs too precisely. "You said the Whisk might be important," she began. "Did you find something?" "Indeed," Wolfe said, "though not within the Whisk itself." She waited. Wolfe waited longer. I cleared my throat. "Someone came for it," I said. "Last night. Left a threat. Collected it from our stoop." "We had someone watching." Hester's posture stiffened. "You let them take it?" "No," Wolfe said. "We allowed them to believe they had taken it. But they were followed." Her eyes flicked to me. "Did you see who it was?" "I saw where they went." To a second-floor walk-up in Flatbush. There it was. A microsecond of stillness, like a batter flinching before the pitch. "I've never been to Flatbush," she said. "Flat. Quick. Too soon." "Miss Dole," Wolfe said, "we have surveillance footage. The apartment was leased under an alias by someone linked to Lummis. The assistant to Miss Hunt delivered the rent in cash, and you were seen entering that apartment last night." Her mouth opened, closed, and she shook her head slowly. "All right," she said. "I didn't know you'd trace it that fast, but it's not what you think." "I think," Wolfe said, "you found something you didn't understand, and, in an effort to protect yourself, you buried it in an empty apartment." She didn't deny it. "I found the note, not behind the spice rack, on Leo's desk, tucked inside a recipe draft. I was cleaning up late after shooting, and I spotted he thinks the kitchen is his kingdom. You know the rest. I panicked. I didn't know what to do. Leo had been getting into arguments with Pete and Andrew, and Delia barely looked at him anymore. But I didn't want to take it to the police. They'd write it off." "So you brought it here," I said. "But not the note." She nodded. "I didn't want Wolfe to think I was making it up. The Whisk was proof he'd died holding something strange." "And the note?" Wolfe asked. She hesitated. "It's in the apartment. I left it there, in a book, just in case I needed it later. I didn't want to be caught carrying it. Wolfe sighed. You complicate things needlessly. You believe the note is authentic? Yes. Then why didn't you tell the police? She swallowed. Because if I did, I'd be the first suspect. I found the body. I had a past with Leo. I knew things the others didn't. Such as, she looked down at her hands. Leo kept a private file. He'd been documenting things. Arguments, odd behavior, changes in ingredient orders, even a missing camera card from a shoot 2 weeks ago. He told me he was working on something, said it might shake things up, but he didn't explain. I exchanged a glance with Wolfe. And this file? Wolfe asked. I don't know where it is. I checked his desk after the body was removed. Nothing. Wolfe grunted. You suspect one of the others found it first? Yes. Then we are. Back to motive, I jumped in. She says Leo was documenting behavior, missing equipment. Arguments sounds like sabotage. Or blackmail, Wolfe said. Hester flinched. Does that ring a bell? I asked. She took a breath. There's been pressure. Lummis has been bleeding talent lately. One of the hosts, Ansel. Rusk quit after a leaked recording of him screaming at a producer hit the web. Andrew was furious. Leo had mentioned a pattern, scripts being accidentally misdelivered, edited shots going missing. And last week a product partner pulled out last minute, said they received footage of their new cookware line being burned on camera. Wolfe frowned. A deliberate smear intended to collapse confidence in the company. Exactly, she said. Leo said someone was trying to destroy the brand. From the inside. Why? She looked at me, then Wolfe. Because Lummis is up for acquisition. A major culinary media group has been circling. If the brand tanks, the price drops. Someone could buy it for a song and rebuild with their own team. That sharpened the air. Wolfe leaned back, his fingers templed. Sabotage for gain, he murmured. Rarely subtle, but frequently effective. I stood. We need to talk to Andrew again. If he's directing the chaos or covering for whoever is, it's time to rattle the cage. No, Wolfe said. First the note, retrieve it. And send Saul to trace the missing file. If it exists, it must be somewhere. On a hard drive, a backup, or in the cloud. Use Lon. Use Fred Durkin. Use a crowbar if you must. I turned to Hester. You coming with me? She shook her head. The key's taped under the fire extinguisher in the hallway. I haven't been back since yesterday. Wise, Wolfe muttered. Return to your apartment and remain there. Do not speak to anyone from Lummis. Hester nodded and left, coat hugged tight around her. After she was gone, Wolfe finally stood, a rare occurrence outside mealtimes, and walked slowly to the safe behind the bookshelf. From it, he withdrew a thin envelope and handed it to me. What's this? I asked. A letter from Leo Rain, he said, delivered this morning by courier. I opened it and read aloud. If anything happens to me, tell the man in the chair. He'll know it wasn't an accident. I believe I've found who's behind the sabotage, but I haven't yet uncovered proof. If I don't make it to our meeting, Thursday morning they got to me first. My backup files are secured. The key is in the Whisk. The name is inside the file titled Rolling Pins. I looked up. The Whisk, Wolfe said softly. Held the key. I nodded. Which we found, but not the file. Wolfe exhaled. So we bait again, but this time with more than a decoy. We flush the culprit, and when they come for what's left... He trailed off. They won't find a kitchen, I said. They'll find a courtroom. Wolfe nodded once. Or me, he said. By the time I'd pulled the note from the Flatbush apartment, wedged between the pages of the gastronomic gospel according to Lummis, Wolfe had already deployed Saul, Lon, and Fred in a coordinated maneuver, worthy of a military chessboard. Saul was digging through Leo Rain's cloud backups. Lon was charming the tech team at Lummis with the promise of an exclusive, and Fred Durkin had been sent to keep an eye on Andrew Crimm's movements. I got back to the brownstone around 10 a.m., with the note safely in an envelope, and my shoes a little less pristine than Wolfe liked. He took the envelope with a frown, opened it, and read the note aloud, in that measured baritone that could. "Make a diner menu sound like a will. He thinks the kitchen is his kingdom. He'll die with a whisk in his hand, but he won't take the secrets with him, not all of them." I made sure of that. "That," he said, "is not a threat, it is a declaration." I nodded. Someone knew Leo was keeping track. They were planning his exit. "Possibly," Wolfe said, "or they believed he intended to expose them, and chose a theatrical end. But this tone suggests confidence, arrogance," I offered a theory. "Pete?" Wolfe made a dismissive noise. "He lacks the scope. This requires planning, detail, opportunism." "Delia, then?" Wolfe frowned. "Too proud to leave a calling card." "No, this voice is indirect, mocking, a director's voice, someone who enjoys arranging others." "Andrew." "Yes?" At that moment the doorbell rang. I went to answer it, and wasn't surprised to see Saul Panzer standing on the stoop with a flash drive, an expression that could be mistaken for neutrality by anyone who didn't know that Saul only looked like that when he was pleased with himself. He came in, nodded to Wolfe, and held out the drive. Found it. The backup folder wasn't in the cloud itself, but on a private subdirectory synced to a local drive Leo used at work. He'd hidden it in a dummy account under the name P. Soufflé. Password protected, but weak. Wolfe raised a brow. "What was the password?" Saul smiled faintly. "Whistle while you whisk." I plugged it into the office laptop and brought up the contents on the screen. There were over 30 files, screenshots of messages, raw video clips, timestamps from security cameras, and a text document titled "Rolling Pins." I clicked it open. Wolfe leaned forward. The document was a log. Leo had kept track of unusual events over the last 6 weeks. Missing footage, delayed deliveries, unexplained audio drops. But at the end, there was a summary in his own words. Andrew's been using off-hours studio time. The logs don't show it, but the janitor says he's been there after midnight more than once. I found a deleted project labeled "Before the Merger." It had cut footage, clips of chefs making errors, edited to make them look incompetent or unstable. Some of it's clearly faked. I think he's going to leak them before the acquisition gets finalized. He's sabotaging the studio so it tanks in value. Then he or someone he's working with can pick it up for cheap. He mentioned an old investor once. A private group, maybe foreign money, I don't know yet. But I think he suspects I'm onto him. He started asking Delia questions about my schedule. I leaned back. Blackmail, corporate sabotage, and maybe foreign investment. Sounds like Crimm's running more than a kitchen show. Wolfe nodded. He seeks to destroy and rebuild under his own name. A ruin purchased for a pittance. Saul added. Leo was going to confront him. That's clear from the file metadata. He updated this 2 days before he died. He must have thought the whistle whisk was the safest place to hide the key. Except Crimm got there first, I said. Wolfe stood, twice in 1 week, which should have caused thunder, and went to the phone. He called Inspector Kramer. I have evidence of premeditated sabotage and suspected homicide, Wolfe said. I recommend you bring Andrew Crimm in for questioning. He paused. Yes, because someone is dead, that should still matter. Then he hung up and turned to me. Archie, summon everyone, here today, 5 o'clock. You're ready for the office gathering? Past ready. The soufflé is risen. Now we see who deflates. At 5 on the dot, the suspects were seated in Wolfe's office like ingredients awaiting judgment. Delia wore a practiced scowl. Pete slouched like he was auditioning for Most Likely to Confess by Accident. Hester, wide-eyed but composed. Hand Andrew Crim, cool, amused, legs crossed, fingers steepled in imitation of Wolfe himself. Wolfe didn't rise. He rarely did. He simply let the room settle into silence before he spoke. "You are all here because of a murder," he said. "Leo Raine did not die of misadventure, nor did he perish from food poisoning or fatigue. He died because he uncovered a scheme and took steps to expose it." Crim smiled. "That's quite a claim. Do you have evidence?" "Yes," Wolfe said. Leo kept a log. He documented sabotage, footage manipulations, withheld deliveries, and reputational damage to Lummis culinary media. He paused. "He traced those events back to you, Mr. Crim. Your name appears 6 times in the final entry." Crim blinked just once, but it was the blink of a man who'd just seen a knife he thought he'd hidden. Wolfe continued. "The Whisk contained a key. That key led us to Leo's files. You attempted to recover it, sending a threat to Mr. Goodwin. We traced you to an apartment leased under an alias. We have surveillance." "I didn't," Crim began. But Wolfe raised a hand. "The motive is clear. With Lummis destabilized, its valuation would fall. You hope to purchase it via a private group. Perhaps you still will. But first, you will answer to the authorities." Crim stood. "This is ridiculous." "Inspector Kramer," Wolfe called, not raising his voice. Kramer stepped in from the hall with 2 uniforms behind him. "Arrest him," Wolfe said. "He's yours." Crim's face went flat, then angry, then resigned. As the cuffs went on, he turned to Hester. "He was a fool to trust you." She didn't reply. Wolfe waited until the room had emptied. Then he looked at me. "Another kitchen spoiled by ambition," I said. "You're not wrong." He nodded once, then stood. "Tell Fritz we'll have risotto tonight. Simplicity is a balm." And just like that, the kitchen was clean again. Dinner. That night was a subdued affair. Mushroom risotto with shaved pecorino and a fennel orange salad that Wolfe praised with a grunt, which in his language was high applause. Fritz served with his usual precision, but even he looked curious enough to linger before dessert. He knew something had cracked, and he was waiting for confirmation that the house was once again safe from culinary subterfuge. When Wolfe folded his napkin and pushed back his chair, I knew the evening's work wasn't done. We returned to the office, and I had just poured him a bottle of Munich Dark when the phone rang again. I picked up. "Archie Goodwin speaking." A pause, then a voice. Calm. Male. Measured. "You took Andrew down. Nicely done. But you didn't. Get the whole story." Click. I stared at the receiver. Wolfe was watching me. "Let me guess," he said. "A ghost of the kitchen?" "Something like that," I replied. "He congratulated us, then hinted we missed something." Wolfe sighed and sipped his beer. "I detest plot twists after dinner." "So do I said. "But I think this one's still got a pulse." The next morning, I was at my desk flipping through Leo Raine's recovered files for the 3rd time when Saul called in. He'd been cross-checking Lummis's shareholder list and found a red flag. A small foreign media company, Ceramique Holdings, had recently purchased a silent minority stake. It wasn't much, 7%, but enough to sit in on merger talks. Ceramique, as it turned out, had also made quiet offers on 2 other production firms in the past year, both of which had suffered internal scandals weeks before their bids were accepted. Saul's tone was dry. "Patterns familiar. Sabotage," I said. "Devalue, then buy. And guess who brokered the deal for Lummis?" "Don't say Crim." "No," Saul said. "Delia Hunt." I sat back. "That doesn't track. She was bitter, sure, but she had no control over the files. Leo never mentioned her being involved." "She was the original liaison," Saul said. "Andrew replaced her after the last product partner pulled out, but she had access and motive. After I hung up, I gave Wolfe the summary. He didn't move for a long time. Finally, he said, 'Bring her.' Delia arrived mid-afternoon. She didn't ask questions, just gave me a look like she'd expected this from the moment Crim was cuffed. Wolfe didn't waste time. "Miss Hunt," he said, "we have uncovered a financial trail linking you to Ceramique Holdings, the same group your late colleague believed was behind an internal sabotage campaign. Your name does not appear in Leo Rain's files, but his files were incomplete." Delia remained still. "I have no connection to Ceramique." Wolfe raised a hand. "We do not accuse you, not yet. But I would like an explanation as to why. You were removed from the liaison role with Lummis's investors 2 weeks before Mr. Rain died." She hesitated. "I made a mistake. A meeting I missed. They wanted someone more reliable. Andrew volunteered." Wolfe tilted his head. "Or perhaps someone more willing." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you want from me?" "The truth," Wolfe said. "You disliked Leo, but you did not kill him. That much I believe. However, you may know who did, or at the very least you know what Leo was about to expose." Delia leaned back. Her hands, which had been resting neatly in her lap, now clenched the chair arms. "I didn't know what Andrew was doing until it was too late," she said finally. "I was supposed to negotiate with the Ceramique team, yes. But I walked when they asked for exclusive rights to our back catalogue footage. It didn't feel right. Andrew took over. He said he could make it worth their while. And you said nothing." "I had no proof," she said. "I thought Leo might have something. I even asked him. He just said soon. The next day he was dead." Wolfe's voice was cold. "And you didn't come forward." Delia looked down. "Would you have?" That ended that. After she left, Wolfe summoned Saul again. His orders were succinct. Verify Delia's withdrawal from the deal, trace any payments or transfers from Ceramique, and find out whether Andrew Crim was working alone or as part of a larger strategy. While Saul handled the financials, I followed up with Hester. I found her at home, surrounded by half-packed boxes. "You leaving town?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "No, just moving out of my sublet. Thought it might be smart to avoid any more surprise visits from saboteurs." "Good thinking. I've got a question for you, though." "Shoot." "Did Leo ever tell you why he picked Wolfe? Why not just hand his files to the police?" She hesitated. "He didn't trust them. But it was more than that. He said Wolfe wouldn't be bought, and he liked that he never left the house. Said it made him easier to trust." I nodded and glanced around the apartment. "Did Leo ever mention Delia? Not just professionally?" She frowned. "Only that she was ambitious. Too ambitious. He said she was the best recipe writer he'd ever worked with, and also the person most likely to sell a soufflé to a bricklayer." I thanked her, left, and passed the info to Wolfe. That evening Saul returned. He laid out his findings. Delia had indeed turned down the Ceramique offer. But a week later, her assistant received a $10,000 deposit from a European bank. The assistant had no business reason for it. When questioned, he panicked and confessed that Delia had told him to rent the Flatbush apartment. Said, "It was insurance in case something went wrong." "So she did know," I said. Wolfe nodded. "Yes, but not everything. I believe she feared exposure, perhaps not murder. She covered herself, but she did not kill Leo." "Then who did?" Wolfe looked at me. "We shall ask." "You mean?" "Yes," he said. "Everyone, again. And this time, we forced the lie to reveal itself." I gave him a long look. "Another office gathering?" "No," Wolfe said. "Something more intimate." He lifted his glass of beer. "We invite only the living, and ask them what they've done with the dead." By the next morning, Wolfe had drawn the circle tighter than the mouth of a worried maitre d'. The plan wasn't to repeat the usual office gathering. We'd done that song. This time Wolfe wanted something quieter, intimate, not a public. Unmasking, but a quiet turning of the screw, one slow rotation at a time. "I want only 3, Wolfe said over breakfast. Miss Hunt, Mr. Brand and Miss Dole. Bring them one by one. The order matters. That was Wolfe's version of dramatic staging. When he starts setting scenes like he's writing theatre, it means we're getting close to the curtain. I called all three. Delia agreed with clipped efficiency. Pete was wary but curious. Hester once again sounded scared, which to Wolfe was as revealing as a confession. By 3 o'clock, Delia was in the red chair again, coat draped across her lap. Eyes sharper than the cheese slicer Fritz won't let me touch. Wolfe didn't delay. You have been less than forthright, Miss Hunt, he said. She opened her mouth, but Wolfe raised a finger. You withheld knowledge of the Flatbush apartment. You instructed your assistant to lease it. You accepted payment, indirectly from a foreign holding group with clear interest in Lummis's demise. And you chose to remain silent when Mr. Rain was killed. I do not claim you killed him, but you let him die without interference. Her jaw tightened. I didn't know he was going to be killed. But you suspected, Wolfe said. You suspected, and you did not act. Delia looked down. No one else would have. He was trying to be a hero, and I didn't think heroes survived that long in kitchens. Wolfe grunted. You may go, she blinked. That's it? For now, he said. But do not make plans to leave the city. Delia rose, nodded once, grim, efficient, and left the room. Pete Brand came in next, hunched in a jacket one size too large and looking like he'd spent the night on a couch he didn't own. I offered him water. He asked for coffee. Fritz, behind the scenes, provided it within 90 seconds, proving once again that he's got ears sharper than most radio techs. Wolfe said, Mr. Brand, you expressed discontent with Mr. Rain's promotion. Did you believe he had earned it? Pete laughed, short and bitter. Leo could plate a turnip like it was a Fabergé egg, but he couldn't direct a segment to save his life. And yet, he was about to be made creative director. Pete shrugged. That's Lummis. Flashover function. I stayed because I needed the paycheck. Did you know Mr. Crimm's intent to tank the brand before acquisition? His brow furrowed. You think Andrew was behind that? We know he was, but we do not yet know who helped him. Pete snorted. Wasn't me. I'm good at food. Not conspiracies. I can't even manage a shared Google Calendar. Nevertheless, Wolfe said, you had motive, you had access, and you stood to benefit if Leo were removed from the chain of command. Pete sipped his coffee. Doesn't mean I killed him. No, Wolfe said, but it means I cannot yet exonerate you. He gestured. Pete stood. Do I need a lawyer? If you believe the innocent always win, Wolfe said, then no. Pete left, and I waited a beat before opening the door again. Hester Dole stepped in, pale, calm, and once again too prepared. She sat without prompting, folded her hands, and stared directly at Wolfe. Mr. Wolfe, she said, I have something to tell you. He inclined his head. Speak, she exhaled, slow. The night Leo died, I was there. Wolfe didn't blink. You previously claimed you discovered the body in the morning. I lied, she said. I went back that night. I wanted to talk to him. We were supposed to meet after everyone. Els had left. I got there early. He was already gone. Was he holding the whisk? Yes. Did you move it? No. Why lie? Because I panicked, and because I knew what he'd told me earlier that day. Wolfe waited. He said he had proof, names, motives, but he hadn't sent it yet. He said he was still compiling it. When I saw him dead, I thought someone had beaten him to it. I thought maybe it would look like I did it. I didn't know who to trust. So I left. I went back the next morning, pretending it was my first time seeing the scene. You then took the whisk. I thought it might help. And the note, she paused. I found it in his folder, not on the desk. I took it, hid it in Flatbush. I know how that looks. It looks, Wolfe said, like you were afraid of more than being suspected. You were afraid the truth would implicate someone you still trusted. She swallowed. Who? I asked gently. There was a long silence. Finally, she said, Delia. I blinked. Delia? Why? Because Leo told me something I didn't understand at the time. He said Delia used to be close with Krim, very close, that they were working on something together, before he was promoted. Then she pulled back, but Leo said he wasn't sure she'd ever really stopped helping him. And now? Wolfe asked. I think she changed her mind too late. I think she knew something was going to happen. But she didn't stop it. Wolfe closed his eyes. You believe she regrets it? Yes. And you? I regret not stopping it either. He nodded. You may go. She stood. Is that it? For now. She left. I waited for Wolfe to speak. He didn't. I finally said, We're close. Yes, Wolfe said. But not done. We have motive and guilt of omission, but no proof of action. You still think there's another player? No, Wolfe said. I think the killer is among those three, but I believe they made a mistake. What kind? He opened his eyes. They failed to remove something Leo left behind. And we're going to find it. How? He smiled slightly. We search his last dish. When Wolfe says something dramatic like, we search his last dish, it isn't metaphor. It isn't poetry. It means I'm going to spend the afternoon elbow deep in food containers and digital records while he sits in his oversized chair and lets the weight of his brilliance hover over the room like a heat lamp. Leo Rain's last day alive had been a recipe shoot for a holiday segment, simple festive comforts, according to the call sheet Lon Cohen dug up for us, recipes filmed, spiced duck breast, parsnip puree, cranberry gastrique, and a rustic apple galette, the kind of thing Wolfe would reject as fusion minimalism, but would still eat with enthusiasm if Fritz plated it. I started with the footage. The archive team at Lummis had been unusually cooperative ever since Krim's arrest. Whether that was fear or professional admiration for Wolfe, I didn't know or care. They handed over raw camera files from the shoot, unedited and time-stamped. The final dish Leo had plated before his death, the apple galette. Of course, Wolfe murmured when I reported this back to him. Symbolism atop symbolism. The circle, the fruit, the rusticity. He was staging a farewell. You think he knew he was going to be killed? I think he suspected it was imminent, Wolfe said. And being Leo Rain, I suspect he tucked a farewell where only another obsessive would notice it. That meant I had to be obsessive. So I was. I played the final 5 minutes of that galette segment a dozen times. I watched Leo flour the dough, layer the apples, brush the egg wash. His tone was smooth, confident. Not scared, but he was measured. He kept glancing slightly to the left of the camera. And at exactly 2 minutes and 23 seconds into the plating, he slid something small beneath the baking sheet on the wooden prep surface. You wouldn't see it unless you were looking. I rewound, zoomed. It wasn't a tool, too flat. Not kitchenware. A slip of paper I called the studio. Asked to have the prop galette tray pulled from storage. Got told it had already been cleaned and reused, but the surface it had sat on, the prep board, was still in the equipment room. I went down there myself. Tucked beneath the back lip of the prep board, scuffed but intact, was a small grease-splotched envelope. It had been taped into the corner, nearly invisible unless you lifted it. The envelope contained a single SD card. I didn't even open it at the studio. I came straight back to the brownstone, handed it to Wolfe like it was the Holy Grail, and waited while Fritz brought us black coffee and something sweet that involved cardamom. Wolfe slid the card into the reader. The single video file was time-stamped the night before Leo died. We watched. It was footage of Andrew Krim. A hidden camera, angled, from behind a row of stacked mixing bowls, probably Leo's setup, capturing Krim alone in the studio kitchen after hours. He moved with purpose, opening a cabinet, removing a hard drive, plugging it into the editing suite, and copying files from a folder labeled faulty. Then he added an audio overlay, his own voice imitating another chef, clipped together to make it sound like the chef was admitting incompetence, sabotage, but it wasn't just Krim. At one point, a shadow crossed the frame. A second person entered. A woman's voice, faint but clear, whispered, "Are you sure this will work?" Krim replied, "He'll be out before he even knows it's me." The woman stepped closer. Blonde hair, crisp blouse, Delia Hunt. Wolfe said nothing. I leaned forward, hands gripping the armrests. So much for changing her mind. "She changed it too late," Wolfe murmured. "I suppose we're ready for the final course." Wolfe didn't smile. "Yes, bring them, all of them. One last time." At 6:30 that evening, the suspects were seated again in Wolfe's office. The air was different now. No posturing, no tight smiles. Even Pete looked like he was done pretending he was just along for the ride. Wolfe didn't prolong the moment. "You why?" "Are here because I have recovered the final evidence," he said. Leo Raine suspected he was being followed. He believed he would not live to expose the sabotage within Lummis. So he left us a message, hidden not in files, nor a note, nor a device, but in the dish he plated last, his galette. He turned to Delia. "We watched the video, Miss Hunt. You were there. You aided Mr. Krim. You may have regretted it. You may even have attempted to distance yourself, but you were complicit." Delia didn't speak. Her face went pale. "You gave him access," Wolfe continued. "You helped manipulate the footage. You enabled the leaks. You expected to gain control of the brand when it collapsed. And when Leo threatened that plan, you hoped Andrew would intimidate him into silence." Still, Delia didn't move. "You didn't expect Andrew to kill him." Her lip trembled. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't." Wolfe raised a hand. "No, you didn't. But you made it possible. That, Miss Hunt, is your sin." He turned now to Hester, and his tone shifted slightly. Miss Dole tried to salvage what you could. You feared becoming a scapegoat. You hid the note. You brought us the whisk. And yet you never shared what Leo told you, about Delia, about the plan. You let suspicion fester, and you let others believe you had more to do with it than you did. Hester looked down. Wolfe turned at last to Pete. "You, Mr. Brand, are merely guilty of envy. You resented Leo. You whispered, grumbled, fueled tension. But you did not kill him. You lacked the foresight and the motive. You were a distraction, not a danger." Pete opened his mouth to protest, then seemed to realize it was a compliment. Wolfe leaned back, closed his eyes briefly, and opened them again. "I have given my findings to Inspector Kramer. He is already en route," and right on cue the doorbell rang. Delia stood suddenly. "Please." Wolfe held up a hand. "No, Miss Hunt. You had your chance." She sat. The door opened, and Kramer entered, scowling like someone had interrupted a nap he hadn't even started yet. "Which one?" he asked. Wolfe pointed. "Delia Hunt. Conspiracy, obstruction, and aiding a man who committed murder." As the cuffs clicked into place, Wolfe said, more to himself than the room, "Even the best galette has a burnt edge." And just like that, the kitchen's last secret was served. The brownstone exhaled after Delia Hunt was led away. You could feel it, the way silence settled in after a storm, not gentle, but heavy with the knowledge that something had broken and wouldn't be put back quite the same. Wolfe didn't move. Not yet. That's his ritual after the end of a case. Let the dust fall on its own while he sits like a statue absorbing the aftermath, like an old general surveying a battlefield that's finally gone quiet. I stood by the office window, watching Kramer's car disappear down 35th Street. Pete Brand and Hester Dole had both left quietly, Pete with a kind of relieved slump in his shoulders, and Hester with eyes that didn't quite know whether to cry or sleep for a week. I'd offered to call her a cab, and she'd shaken her. Head said she wanted to walk. "Clear the flour from my brain," she said. Wolfe broke the silence with a sigh that sounded as though it had been aged in a barrel. "I detest messes," he muttered, "especially moral ones." "That's most of them," I said, "at least in our line." He frowned. Miss Hunt had talent, clarity. She could have led that company. "She led it," I said, "just in the wrong direction." He didn't. Disagree. I poured him another glass of beer, Doppelbock this time, from the Bavarian shelf, and brought one for myself. I figured I'd earned it. He took it without comment, sipped once, and then stared into it as though it might reveal the deeper mysteries of humanity. After a moment he asked, "Did Mr. Cohen send the article draft?" "He did," I said. "Lead story for Sunday's lifestyle section. He's calling it The Whisk That Stirred a Scandal. Wants your approval before he prints." Wolfe grimaced. "The title offends me." "That's how you know it'll sell?" He didn't dispute that either. I fetched the typescript from the desk drawer and set it in front of him. He skimmed it quickly, his eyes moving line by line with surprising speed, for a man who thought a brisk walk to the orchid room qualified as cardio. Lon's piece was good, clean, sharp, and restrained. No tabloid punch. He covered Leo Rain's whistle whisk, the sabotage plot, Krim's arrest, and Delia's quiet cooperation turned silent betrayal. He even mentioned Wolfe's refusal to set foot outside the brownstone, phrased as strategic immobility, which Wolfe found tolerable. When he was done, he set the pages aside and closed his eyes. "Are we done?" I asked. "No," Wolfe said. "Not until we discuss Miss Dole." I raised an eyebrow. "You don't think she was involved?" "I am certain she was not involved in the crime, but she was involved in the aftermath. She obscured facts, shaped narrative, and used us to draw out the truth while hiding her full knowledge. She brought us the whisk. She brought Curse bait," Wolfe corrected. "Willingly, yes, but not openly. She intended to manipulate the board while appearing unaware of the rules. I thought about that. She also called us first. Indeed, which shows sense and timing. She will go far if she chooses to remain in food or in something more subtle, like marketing," Wolfe grunted, "or espionage." We sat for a while, the kind of quiet that isn't awkward, just long. I finished my beer. Wolfe nursed, his slowly. Finally I said, "You think she's dangerous?" "No," Wolfe said, "but she is not harmless. There's a difference." At 7:15, Fritz knocked gently and announced that dinner was ready. Chicken liver mousse on toast points, a consommé of duck, and a green salad with endive. A calm, clean meal after a week that had smelled of cinnamon, betrayal, and old grease. I followed Wolfe to the dining room. He sat, took up his napkin, and then paused. "Archie," he said. "Yeah? What do you believe Leo Rain wanted most?" At the end. I thought about that. The galette. The hidden card. The message buried in flour and butter. He wanted the truth to get out, and for someone to recognize the recipe he'd left behind. Wolfe nodded. "Yes." He picked up his fork. "That," he said, "is the only kind of immortality a cook can count on." And with that, we ate. The next morning, New York slipped into one of those crisp, late autumn moods where the air feels like it's been ironed and the sidewalks glint under low sun. I came downstairs to find Wolfe already in his chair, an occurrence about as rare as a sincere compliment from Inspector Kramer. He wasn't reading the Gazette or rearranging orchid notes. He was staring at the globe on the corner table as, if waiting for it to tell him what had gone wrong in the Northern Hemisphere. Trouble? I asked, pouring myself a cup of coffee from the sideboard. No, he said. Only the lingering presence of a question. I set the cup down. You thinking about Leo Rain again? Yes, and about the nature of loyalty. I sat. You think Hester lied to us? No, Wolfe said. But I believe she omitted something critical, something she believed she had a right to withhold. Which would be? He looked at me now. Why she knew to come to me, not the police, not her boss, me. She said Leo told her, "Tell the man in the chair." Yes, but that is a peculiar choice of words for someone who'd never met me. I tilted my head. You think Leo had been planning to contact you himself? I think, Wolfe said, that he had already done so. That clicked something loose in my head. I got up, crossed to the filing cabinet, and flipped through the records. Wolfe doesn't get mail from strangers. Everything's logged. If Leo Rain had written, called, or sent so much as a smoked salt sampler, it would be in here. 5 minutes later, I had it. A single envelope, hand-addressed to Wolfe, postmarked 5 days before Leo's death. The return address was the Lummis studio. Inside, a short note. Mr. Wolfe, I believe something at Lummis is rotten, and I am preparing evidence. If anything happens to me before I deliver it, someone will come to you. Her name is Hester Dole. Trust her up to a point. Leo Rain, I handed it to Wolfe without a word. He read it twice, then laid it on the desk. I had not seen it, he said. Fritz likely placed it among the unsolicited correspondence. I should have noticed. No one's perfect, I said. Not even you. Wolfe gave me a look as dry as old toast. But it explains why Hester came to us so fast, I said. She knew Leo had told her. More than that, Wolfe said. She was the contingency. I sat down again, coffee forgotten. You think he told her everything? No, Wolfe said. Just enough to make her dangerous, to the right people, and make her come to me. I tapped my fingers against the arm of the chair. You going to call her? No. Why not? Because she has done what she was meant to do, Wolfe said. She carried the baton through a minefield and handed it to the right hands. Her silence was calculated but not malicious, and she has paid her price. I shrugged. Fair enough. What about the others? Kramer will take care of Miss Hunt. Mr. Brand will return to quiet mediocrity. The company will rebuild, or be sold, or both. It is no longer our concern. I stood. So we close the file? Wolfe nodded. Yes, but first, Mr. Cohen. I dialed Lon Cohen and handed Wolfe the phone. The call was brief. Wolfe approved the article, asked for a small correction, changing immovable recluse to deliberate tactician, which Lon promised to do, and hung up without flourish. Then Wolfe did something rare. He left the office and walked slowly into the plant rooms. I didn't follow. He needed the orchids more than he needed me just then. I spent the morning cleaning up, filing, deleting messages, logging receipts. By noon, Fritz announced that lunch would be lamb ragout with pearl onions, and I was halfway to the table when the doorbell rang. I opened it expecting Kramer, or maybe Saul. Instead, it was Hester Dole. She looked rested, composed. She held no envelope, no bag, no whisk. I'm not here to start anything, she said. Come in, I said, and led her to the office. Wolfe didn't rise when she entered, but he did nod. A high honor. I found the letter, I said. The one Leo sent before he died. He named you. She didn't look surprised. I thought he might have. Why didn't you tell us? I asked. I didn't want to influence your judgment, she said. Leo trusted you. So I thought if I told you he sent me, you'd see everything I said through his lens. I wanted to stand on my own. Wolfe regarded her a moment. You did, he said. Barely. She smiled a little. And now? You may go back to your life, Wolfe said, or build a new one. Will you ever take a case from me again? No, Wolfe said, but I will take a meal. If you ever open a restaurant, send a card. Archie will come first. If he survives, I will follow. She laughed softly. Fair enough. She left without fanfare. Wolfe turned to me. Archie, I will take my lunch now. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Then, as Fritz poured coffee, Wolfe spoke again. There is a saying, he said, revenge is a dish best served cold, but truth, I think, is better warm, baked, wrapped, and quietly passed across a table. I raised my cup. To Leo Raine, then? Yes, Wolfe said. To the man who plated his message with apples and left justice tucked under the crust. And with that, the case of the Whisk that whistled murder was, at last, well and truly done. The brownstone had resumed its regular rhythm. The last of the guest chairs had been returned to the hall. The orchids were getting their full share of Wolfe's attention again, and Fritz was once more guarding the sanctity of the kitchen, like a loyal knight sworn to the blade of beurre blanc. If anything still lingered in the air, it was the faint scent of cinnamon from Fritz's apple tart. His tribute, he said, to Leo Raine, though he never mentioned the name directly. That was Fritz for you. Sentimental without ever seeming like. Wolfe, as usual, had declined to leave the house in the week since Delia Hunt's arrest. But the phone had rung daily, Kramer confirming new charges, Lon Cohen following up with quotes for the feature, and 3 different publishers offering Wolfe a contract for a cookbook expose, which he dismissed with a curt "Pfui." I was in the office polishing off a piece of tart and rereading the final section of Leo's journal. His last terse entry, "If it ends here, fine." At least the truth will be served. With crust it stayed with me. Maybe because it was tidy, or maybe because in its own twisted way, it was exactly how Wolfe liked his endings, measured, deliberate, and plated without flourish. I looked up when Wolfe spoke. "She will not be convicted of murder," he said. "Delia?" He nodded. "There is no direct proof that she ordered it. She will be charged with conspiracy, obstruction, possibly corporate sabotage, but not the killing itself." "She helped Krim," I said. "She was there. She let it happen." "Yes. And she will pay. But Leo Raine's death officially remains Krim's act alone. Poison, slipped into a cup of saffron tea during a late-night meeting. Quick, quiet, and elegant enough to fool even the first responders." I grimaced. "They said he looked like he fell asleep." "He did," Wolfe said, painless. "Perhaps not what he deserved, but appropriate, considering how he lived." I tossed the rest of the tart onto my plate. "You still thinking about Hester?" "I am," Wolfe said. Her instincts were sound. Her actions, if not entirely candid, were rational. She did what Leo asked, more than he might have expected. "She didn't ask for anything," I said. "She could have played the angle, claimed credit. But she didn't." "No," Wolfe agreed. "Which is why I instructed Saul to recommend her to the Strauss Group." I blinked. "The culinary media startup. They're hiring, and they value discretion, insight, and loyalty. Miss Dole, I believe, is capable of far more than recipe formatting." I stared. "You're making job referrals now?" "Only when merited," Wolfe said. "It offends me to waste useful talent." The silence that followed was short-lived. The doorbell rang. I got up and opened it to find a slim envelope addressed in ink. No stamp, no name, just Archie Goodwin. I brought it in, opened it, and read aloud. "Dear Mr. Goodwin, I wanted to thank you for treating me like someone worth listening to, even when I wasn't sure myself. I'm leaving New York. Wolfe was right. I need to start something new. But if I ever do open that restaurant, tell him dinner's on me. No cameras, no sabotage, just food." Best Hester Dole Wolfe didn't respond at first. Then he said, "Did she include a menu?" "No," I said. "A shame," he murmured. Still, she may survive this world yet. I tucked the letter into the drawer with the others. Wolfe stood, a rarity on any day ending in Y, and walked toward the plant rooms. Halfway there, he paused and looked back at me. Archie. Yes? There is an order to things, even betrayal, even murder. When one discerns that order, when one identifies its logic, it becomes bearable. I grinned. Even in a kitchen? He nodded. Especially there. And with that he vanished into the orchids. I turned back to my desk, poured myself a final inch of coffee, and looked out the window. The whisk was gone. The files were sealed. The case was over. But for the man who never left the house, Wolfe had once again moved mountains. From his chair, with words, and with that absurd, immovable mind. As for me, I had notes to archive, a new case folder to prep, and one last slice of tart to finish. After all, justice might be Wolfe's specialty, but dessert, that's mine.